Ever feel like life is just like throwing curveball after curveball at you? Like you're always like battling stress, anxieties, and those like little doubts that kind of whisper like, what if?
Hmm.
Well, today's deep dive might just have some answers, and it's from a source you might not expect, chapters 4 and 5 of the book of James.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to unpack some serious wisdom about using humility, patience, and prayer to navigate those rough patches, and find a little more peace in all the chaos. And trust me, this isn't about like dusty old scripture. This is about real life tools you can use like starting right now.
Yeah, it's amazing like how relevant these ancient texts still are today. James just dives right into the heart of our struggles. He starts by asking, what causes fights and quarrels among you?
Mm.
Like, think about all those conflicts that drain you, that leave you feeling frustrated. He suggests they come from our own desires battling within us.
Yeah, that word battle
Yep.
really hits home. I mean, we've all felt that, haven't we? Like that internal tug of war. Like, what you should do, but then there's this other part of you just like screaming, but I want this.
Hmm. Yeah, it's almost like our own pride is like setting us up for conflict.
Exactly. And then
Yeah.
James goes on to offer this really powerful contrast. He says, God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble.
Hmm.
So it's a stark reminder that, our ego can be our own worst enemy.
Yeah, that's a tough one to swallow, isn't it? I know, I struggle with letting go of pride sometimes. But then again, imagine approaching like a tense situation with humility instead of with ego. I mean, could it change the outcome? Could it like open doors you didn't even see before? What do you think?
I think it's like a fundamental shift in perspective.
Yeah.
True humility isn't about thinking less of ourselves. It's about thinking of ourselves less.
Hmm.
It's acknowledging that we don't have all the answers
Hmm.
and we need help sometimes. Yeah, so how do we actually like put this into practice?
Yeah.
Because James doesn't just like leave us hanging with a vague concept of humility. He gives us concrete steps. He says, submit yourselves to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you.
Right. Yeah, there's so much power in just the simplicity of those words.
Mm.
It's about surrendering our ego and choosing to connect with something greater than ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And I love how he doesn't beat around the bush. It's like a direct instruction manual.
Okay.
But then there's also like this beautiful promise embedded in there, come near to God and he will come near to you. Like it's a two-way street.
Absolutely. It's about acknowledging our need for something beyond ourselves. Yeah, we take a step towards it, it takes a step towards us.
It almost makes you wonder, like, what could change in your life if you practiced more humility? Where could that open you up to, like new possibilities or connections?
Hmm. It's a constant challenge, isn't it? To set aside that pride and just admit we don't have it all figured out. And even the idea of like resisting the devil can feel kind of abstract?
Yeah, it can. But what if we thought about it this way? What if the devil that James is referring to is just that negative thought pattern that you keep replaying in your head, like that self-sabotaging voice that holds you back? What would it look like to actively resist that?
Oh, that's good. It could be the key to breaking free from those internal battles that just drain our energy and create all this conflict in our lives. It's about shifting our focus from self to something bigger.
Yeah, speaking of challenges, James doesn't shy away from the tough stuff.
Mhm.
He reminds us that life throws curveballs,
Hmm.
and sometimes that means like facing suffering. He even uses the examples of the prophets and Job, who faced, intense hardship.
Right. The prophets who spoke God's messages, they often endured rejection, persecution, even death. And then you've got Job, who lost, everything, his family, his possessions, his health, and yet he remained faithful.
I mean, those are some pretty heavy hitters, but I think their stories resonate because they remind us that even in like the darkest moments, even when things feel completely unfair, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
It's about holding on to hope, even when we can't see the way forward.
But let's be real for a second. Like waiting and suffering are tough. It's easy to feel lost and forgotten, maybe even angry when we're going through those times. And I think we've all been there, haven't we?
Oh, yeah.
It's okay to acknowledge those feelings, right?
Absolutely. James isn't telling us to suppress our emotions or anything. He's just reminding us that even when we don't understand why we're going through something, we're not alone. He emphasizes that God is full of compassion and mercy, working behind the scenes even when we can't see it.
Mm-hmm. Which brings us to this like crucial idea of trusting God's timing. I'm curious, what's one area of your life where you need to trust God's timing more than your own? Is it a relationship, a career change, a health issue. We all have those areas where we kind of want to like force things, don't we?
We do. And that's where I think the challenge of patience comes in. We often have such a limited perspective. Like we only see a tiny piece of the puzzle, but God sees the whole picture.
Hmm. You ever thought about it that way? Like, what if what we perceive as like a delay or a setback is actually like an opportunity for growth or a redirection towards something even better?
Yeah, it's a pretty radical shift in thinking. To just let go of the need to control every outcome and trust that even when it doesn't feel like it, things are unfolding as they should.
Mm-hmm. That's a powerful thought, isn't it? And it leads perfectly into the last big theme James tackles, the power of prayer. And he gets straight to the point. He says, is anyone among you in trouble? Let them pray. Is anyone happy? Let them sing songs of praise.
Right. I love how inclusive that is. It's not about being a certain type of person or being in a specific situation. Prayers for everyone, regardless of their circumstance. Whether you're facing hardship, celebrating a victory, or just going about your day, prayer is that constant connection to something bigger.
Yeah, it's like a lifeline, isn't it? But it's also not just about, asking for things or complaining. James emphasizes that it's about cultivating an ongoing relationship.
It is. It's about communication, expressing our needs, our gratitude, and just being open to receiving guidance and wisdom.
Exactly. It's a two-way street. And to illustrate this, James shares the story of Elijah. Now, Elijah wasn't some superhuman mystic or anything. He was an ordinary person who faced doubts and fears, just like us. Yet his prayers had a real impact. He prayed, and the rain stopped for 3.5 years. Then he prayed again, and the rain returned.
Wow. The point isn't about controlling the weather. It's about recognizing that prayer isn't just wishful thinking. It's about aligning ourselves with God's will and allowing that power to work through us.
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that idea. Like, can prayer really change things? Or is it just about making us feel better? What do you think?
That's a valid question, and I think it comes down to faith. Believing that even when we don't see immediate results, God is listening and working in ways we may not fully understand. It's not about us forcing things to happen. It's about surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
Mm-hmm. It's about letting go of that illusion of control, isn't it? But it's also about taking action. James isn't suggesting we just sit back and wait for things to magically happen. He's encouraging us to pray boldly.
Yeah.
To bring our whole selves to the table and to be open to what unfolds.
Exactly. And that leads me to a question for you, the listener. What's stopping you from praying boldly today? What dreams, fears, or burdens are you carrying that you could surrender to a higher power? What changes are you longing for in your life or in the world that you could start praying for right now?
Don't let fear or doubt hold you back. Remember, prayer is a conversation, not a performance.
Right. It's about authenticity, honesty, and a willingness to open your heart to something bigger than yourself.
So let's take a step back and see where we've landed. We've explored 3 powerful tools from the book of James: humility, patience, and prayer. And they're not just abstract ideas, They're tools we can use every day to navigate all the ups and downs of life, to find a little more peace in the midst of the chaos.
It's amazing, isn't it, how these ancient principles still hold true today. Humility helps us let go of ego and connect with something greater. Patience allows us to trust in God's timing, even when we don't really understand the plan. And prayer gives us a direct line to communicate our needs, our fears, and our hopes.
It's almost like a roadmap for a more fulfilling life, wouldn't you say?
I think so. It reminds us that we're not meant to go through this journey alone. There's a power greater than ourselves that's available to us if we're willing to tap into it.
And that's the key, isn't it? Willingness. Are we willing to lay down our pride, to trust in something bigger than ourselves, to open our hearts to the power of prayer?
These are choices we make each and every day, choices that shape our experience and ultimately determine the direction of our lives.
So don't let this moment pass. Take a step, however small, toward humility.
Embrace the journey, even when it's challenging, knowing that you're not alone.
And pray boldly, with an open heart and unwavering faith. Because when we connect with that source of strength and wisdom, anything is possible.